Full story. My parents blamed me for getting hit by a drunk driver and ruining my nephew's party. I'm Lillian, 29 years old, lying in a hospital bed with machines beeping around me. Yesterday I was hit by a drunk driver while rushing to my nephew Tyler's birthday party. The worst part. My parents are blaming me for ruining his special day, not even asking if I'll recover. Mom literally said, "Now Tyler's party is ruined," while I had tubes in my arm. Thank goodness for my Grandpa Thomas, the only one who visits daily and actually cares. This family drama goes deeper than you know. Where are you watching from? Hit subscribe if you want to hear how my grandfather's beach house became the unexpected solution to years of family toxicity. Growing up as the middle child between my brother James and younger sister Alicia was never easy. From the beginning, our family dynamic was clear. James was the golden child who could do no wrong. My parents, Margaret and Robert, showered him with praise for even the smallest accomplishments, while my own achievements were often overlooked or dismissed. I still remember the day I graduated college with honors in graphic design. My parents attended, but the celebration dinner afterward quickly turned into a conversation about James's promotion at his entry-level banking job. When I tried to share my excitement about an interview with a design agency, my mother cut me off to ask James more questions about his new office. "That's nice, Lillian," my father had said absently. "James, tell us more about that corner office they're giving you." The pattern continued as we grew older. James married Heather, a woman my parents adored immediately. "She comes from such a good family," my mother would say, as if that was the highest compliment one could receive. When they had Tyler, my nephew, my parents transformed into the most enthusiastic grandparents imaginable. For my birthday last year, I received a gift card to a department store. For Tyler's 6th birthday, my parents rented out an entire children's museum and hired professional entertainers. The disparity was stark, but familiar. Throughout all of this, Grandpa Thomas remained my steadfast ally. My father's dad. He was a quiet, observant man who seemed to see through the family dynamics with crystal clarity. While he loved all his grandchildren, he made special time for me. We would sit on his porch during family gatherings away from the chaos and talk about books, art, and life. "You know, Lillian," he told me once, "some people can't see true value even when it's right in front of them. That doesn't make the value any less real." Those words became a lifeline during difficult family times. Last month I missed a family dinner because I was working late on a project that could lead to a promotion. My mother didn't speak to me for a week, claiming I was choosing work over family and breaking her heart. When the invitation came for Tyler's 7th birthday party, it arrived via text message 3 days before the event. It was a huge production at an expensive adventure park with a superhero theme and professional photographers. The text from my sister-in-law, Heather, included a list of tasks I was expected to help with, including setting up decorations 2 hours early and managing the gift table during the party. "We're counting on you to be there by 200 sharp," my mother called to remind me. "And remember, Tyler wants everyone to wear blue for the photos." Despite the last-minute notice and demanding expectations, I rearranged my schedule to make it work. Tyler was a sweet kid who shared my creative streak, and I didn't want to disappoint him. Plus, the fallout from missing another family event wasn't worth the weeks of guilt trips and cold shoulders that would follow. I had no way of knowing that trying to fulfill these obligations would lead to a catastrophe that would finally expose the true nature of my family relationships. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal people's true colors, and my parents were about to show themselves in ways even I couldn't have imagined. The night before the party, I stayed up late finishing a custom art set for Tyler. I had noticed his talent for drawing during our occasional visits and wanted to encourage it, even though my brother and his wife seemed more interested in pushing him towards sports. The gift included professional-grade colored pencils, sketching tools, and a leather-bound sketchbook with his name embossed on the cover. It was expensive and thoughtful, something I was genuinely excited to give him. As I wrapped the present, my phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Don't forget, you're in charge of bringing the ice for the drinks tomorrow. At least 8 bags. And don't be late. It was just one more demand in a long list, but I replied with a simple, "Will do," knowing that any other response would only lead to conflict. That's how it had always been in our family. Comply, keep the peace. Swallow your feelings. It was exhausting, and it was the only way to maintain any semblance of family connection. Little did I know that my efforts to please them the next day would end with me fighting for my life while they fought for the sanctity of a child's birthday party. The morning of Tyler's party arrived with a series of small disasters. My alarm didn't go off, leaving me rushing to complete an urgent work request that had come in overnight. My boss knew about the party, but had emphasized the importance of this particular client. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial," he'd said. "Just need you to fix these logo variations before their 1 p.m. meeting." I worked frantically, finishing just in time to still make it to the party. Glancing at the clock, I realized I had just enough time to pick up Tyler's gift, grab the ice, and arrive by the 2:00 p.m. setup time my mother had insisted upon. The gift shop was crowded, and the specialty art supplies I'd ordered had been placed on the wrong shelf. After 15 minutes of searching and another 10 waiting in line, I was finally back in my car, the carefully wrapped present secured in the passenger seat. My phone buzzed incessantly. 3 text messages from my mother in quick succession. "Where are you? Everyone is here already. Don't forget the ice." I took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety building in my chest. I was cutting it close, but would still make it on time. The ice was next on my list. I pulled into the parking lot of the grocery store, rushing inside to grab the 8 bags my mother had requested. The store was busy for a Saturday afternoon. The line moved slowly, each minute ticking by, making my shoulders tense further. Finally, I loaded the ice into my trunk, the bags cold against my arms as I hurried to get back on the road. It was 1:52 p.m. I could still make it. The adventure park was just a 10-minute drive away. I pulled out of the parking lot, joining the steady flow of weekend traffic. My phone rang through the car speakers. My mother again. "Lillian, where are you? The ice was supposed to be here already." "I'm on my way, Mom. I'll be there in less than 10 minutes. I assured her, trying to keep my voice steady despite the familiar feeling of inadequacy creeping in. "Well, hurry up. The drinks are getting warm, and you know how your father gets when things aren't perfect for James's family." I sighed as I hung up, focusing on the road ahead. The light turned green and I accelerated through the intersection. I never saw the black SUV coming. There was a horrible screeching sound as the driver barreled through the red light. Time slowed in that surreal way it does during catastrophic moments. I had just enough time to register the vehicle speeding toward my driver's side door, to see the driver's head down, likely looking at a phone. The impact was deafening. Metal crushed against metal as my car spun violently across the intersection. The airbag deployed with explosive force, slamming into my chest and face. Pain shot through my left side where the door crumpled inward. Glass shattered, raining down in tiny fragments that caught the sunlight like deadly diamonds. My car finally came to rest against a traffic pole. Through the haze of shock and pain, I was vaguely aware of people shouting, of someone peering through the broken window asking if I could hear them. The taste of blood filled my mouth and a sharp pain stabbed through my ribs with each shallow breath. "Don't move," a voice instructed. "Help is coming." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I tried to speak but couldn't form words. My left leg was pinned underneath the crushed dashboard, and when I tried to move it, white-hot pain shot through my entire body. The next moments passed in fragments. Paramedics working to stabilize my neck. The jarring sensation of being extracted from the crumpled vehicle. The glimpse of the other driver, a man being administered a field sobriety test, stumbling and slurring his words. In the ambulance, I drifted in and out of consciousness. The paramedic kept talking to me, trying to keep me awake. Through the fog, I heard my phone ringing again and again from the bag they'd placed beside me. One of the EMTs answered it after the 4th call. "Hello, this is emergency medical technician Rivera with patient Lillian. Who am I speaking with?" A pause as the person on the other end responded. Yes, ma'am. Your daughter has been in a serious car accident. We're transporting her to Memorial Hospital now. Another pause. The EMT's expression shifted to confusion, then disbelief. No, ma'am. I don't know anything about ice for a party. As I said, your daughter has been seriously injured and is on her way to the emergency room. Even in my semi-conscious state, I wasn't surprised. Of course, that would be my mother's concern. Not whether I was alive, but whether I had remembered the ice for Tyler's party. The EMT ended the call looking down at me with a mixture of sympathy and shock. Your mom asked about ice after I told her you were in an accident. I tried to smile but winced instead as the ambulance hit a bump. That's my family, I managed to whisper before the darkness claimed me again. The steady beeping of machines pulled me back to consciousness. My eyes felt heavy, refusing to open immediately. When they finally did, harsh fluorescent lights assaulted my vision. I was in a hospital room, tubes and wires connecting me to various monitors and IV bags. A doctor stood at the foot of my bed reviewing a chart. When she noticed I was awake, she moved closer. Ms. Crawford, I'm Dr. Patel. You've been in a serious accident. Can you hear me? I tried to speak, but my throat was painfully dry. Dr. Patel offered me a small sip of water through a straw. You've suffered multiple injuries, she explained gently. 3 broken ribs, a fractured left femur, a concussion, and various lacerations. We've stabilized you, but you're going to need surgery on that leg. You're actually quite lucky. The impact was on your driver's side, and in many similar cases, the outcomes are much worse. Lucky wasn't exactly how I felt, but I understood what she meant. I was alive. The other driver, I managed to ask, Dr. Patel's expression hardened slightly. He sustained minor injuries. His blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit. The police will want to speak with you when you're able. I closed my eyes, absorbing this information. Someone's reckless decision had landed me here broken and in pain. The door to my room burst open and my parents walked in. My mother's makeup was perfect as always, not a hair out of place despite the supposed emergency. My father trailed behind her, checking his watch as they approached. Finally, you're awake, my mother said by way of greeting. Do you have any idea what you've done? Dr. Patel looked taken aback. Mrs. Crawford, your daughter has just regained consciousness after a traumatic accident. She needs rest and support right now. My mother barely acknowledged the doctor. The party was ruined. Absolutely ruined. Tyler was crying because his aunt wasn't there. All the ice melted and the drinks were warm. James had to leave his own son's party to go buy more ice. I stared at her in disbelief. No, how are you feeling? No, we were so worried. Just complaints about a ruined party. My father finally spoke up. You should have left earlier, Lillian. You knew how important this was. Or taken a different route, at least. Dr. Patel stepped between them and my bed. Mr. and Mrs. Crawford, your daughter was hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light. This was not her fault. She has serious injuries and will require surgery. I must insist that you consider her condition before discussing other matters. My mother sniffed. Well, of course we're concerned about her condition. But life goes on, doctor. Family obligations don't just disappear because of an accident. I felt tears welling in my eyes, a combination of physical pain and the emotional wound of their response. This was a new low even for them. The tension in the room was broken by the arrival of Grandpa Thomas. At 78, he moved more slowly than he once did, but his tall frame still commanded respect as he entered. One look at the scene before him, and his usually kind eyes hardened. Margaret Robert, he said, addressing my parents with unusual formality. What exactly is going on here? My mother launched into her complaints about the ruined party again, while my father added comments about my poor planning. Grandpa Thomas listened, his expression growing stonier by the second. When they finished, he spoke quietly but firmly. My granddaughter is lying in a hospital bed after nearly being killed by a drunk driver, and you're concerned about ice at a child's party. Dad, you don't understand, my father began, but Grandpa Thomas cut him off. No, Robert. I understand perfectly. I've understood for years. I just kept hoping you and Margaret would prove me wrong. He turned to me, his expression softening. I'll be staying with Lillian. You two should get back to the party if it's so important. My mother looked flustered. Well, we do need to get back. Heather is trying to salvage things, but it's not the same. We'll check in tomorrow, Lillian. They left without touching me, without expressing love or concern. Grandpa Thomas took the chair beside my bed, reaching for my hand with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, he said, his voice thick with emotion. They don't deserve you. They never have. For the first time since waking up in the hospital, I felt safe. Not okay, not whole, but at least safe enough to let the tears flow freely. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of pain medication and slow recovery. My surgery went well, but the doctors emphasized that my healing journey would be long and difficult. I would need physical therapy follow-up appointments and time off work to recover fully. Grandpa Thomas was my rock through it all. Despite his own health issues, he visited every day, bringing books, small treats, and most importantly, his unwavering support. He would sit beside my bed for hours, sometimes reading to me when the pain medication made it hard for me to focus my eyes, other times just being a comforting presence while I slept. My parents, on the other hand, made only sporadic, brief appearances. My mother would arrive with a forced smile, stay for exactly 20 minutes, and leave with a comment about her busy schedule. My father usually accompanied her, but spent most of his time answering emails on his phone. During one of their visits, I tentatively brought up the mounting medical bills. Even with insurance, the costs were overwhelming. I'm worried about how I'll manage financially, I admitted. The insurance is only covering part of it, and I'll be out of work for a while during recovery. My mother's expression tightened. Well, we're not in a position to help right now. Tyler's party cost a fortune, especially with all the last-minute issues, and we're helping James with the down payment on their new house. My father nodded in agreement. You should talk to the hospital about a payment plan, or maybe your company has some sort of disability coverage. I dropped the subject, the message clear as always. Their financial support was reserved for James and his family. My brother visited once 2 weeks after the accident. He spent most of the time detailing how they had managed to save the party despite my absence. We told everyone you had a minor fender bender, James explained casually. No need to bring down the mood with all the details, you know. When I mentioned that it had been a serious accident caused by a drunk driver, he waved his hand dismissively. Yeah, but you're fine, right? These things happen. Tyler was really disappointed you weren't there, though. He kept asking where his aunt was. I was fighting for my life in the emergency room. I responded, unable to keep the edge from my voice. James looked uncomfortable. Look, I know it was serious, but it's over now, and life goes on. No need to dwell on it. As he was leaving, he added, Mom wanted me to ask if you'll be able to help with Tyler's school fundraiser next month. They need volunteers. I stared at him speechless. He genuinely couldn't see the absurdity of the request. While my family's behavior was hurtful but unsurprising, I found unexpected kindness from the hospital staff. Nurses would stop by during breaks to check on me, bringing extra blankets or simply offering conversation. One aide snuck in homemade cookies claiming they had medicinal properties that science hadn't recognized yet. Meanwhile, the legal case against the drunk driver was taking shape. I learned he had 2 previous DUI convictions and was driving with a restricted license. The police officer who interviewed me was compassionate but direct. With his record and the severity of the accident, he'll be facing serious charges, the officer explained. You'll likely need to testify once you're recovered enough. When I mentioned this to my parents during their next visit, their reaction was telling. Oh, Lillian, do you really need to get involved in all that? My mother asked, clearly uncomfortable. It sounds so unpleasant and drawn out. He nearly killed me, Mom. Yes, but making a scene in court, it's just not how we handle things, she insisted. Sometimes it's better to just move on. My father nodded sagely. Legal proceedings can drag on for years. Is that really how you want to spend your energy? I realized they were more concerned about appearances than justice or my recovery. The possibility that their daughter might be part of a public court case was more troubling to them than the fact that I had nearly died. The final straw came during their visit in my 3rd week at the hospital. My mother was updating me on family news when she casually mentioned Tyler. He's still talking about his ruined birthday party. She sighed. Poor thing. Children don't understand these things. In his mind, his special day was spoiled, and that's all he can focus on. I couldn't hold back any longer. And in your mind, Mom, what are you focusing on? Because it certainly isn't the fact that I almost died. She looked shocked at my outburst. That's not fair, Lillian. Of course we care about your recovery. But you're an adult. Tyler is just a child whose birthday was ruined. By a drunk driver who hit me, I reminded her. Not by me. My mother's expression hardened. Well, if you had left earlier like we asked, none of this would have happened. You knew how important this was. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not my bones or my body, which were slowly mending, but the last thread of hope that my parents might someday see me as worthy of the same love and concern they lavished on my brother and his family. Grandpa Thomas, who had been quietly observing from the corner, finally spoke up. Margaret, that's enough. I've sat by for too long watching how you and Robert treat Lillian. It stops now. My mother looked startled. Dad, you don't understand family dynamics. We treat all our children equally. Grandpa Thomas laughed, but there was no humor in it. If you believe that you're either lying to me or to yourself, either way I won't sit by and watch it anymore. Especially now. The tension in the room was palpable as my grandfather and mother stared at each other, decades of unspoken family dynamics hanging in the air between them. It was clear that a turning point had been reached, though none of us yet knew just how significant that turning point would be. After 3.5 weeks, I was finally discharged from the hospital. Walking was still difficult with my leg in a cast, and using crutches was challenging with my healing ribs, but the doctors agreed I was stable enough to continue my recovery elsewhere. The question was where my small apartment was a 3rd-floor walk-up with no elevator, making it impossible for me to access in my condition. I needed somewhere accessible to recover for at least the next 2 months. My parents reluctantly offered their spare room, but with conditions. You'll need to work around our schedule, my mother explained as she drove me from the hospital. Your father has his morning routine in the bathroom, so you'll have to adjust. And we host bridge club on Wednesdays, so you'll need to stay in your room those evenings. We can't have you interrupting with medical needs. I bit my tongue, focusing on the passing scenery instead of responding. What choice did I have? Grandpa Thomas had offered his home, but he lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in a senior community that didn't allow long-term guests under 65. He seemed troubled by this limitation, but promised to visit daily. The first few days at my parents' house were exactly as difficult as I'd anticipated. My medications were kept in the kitchen, to maintain order, requiring me to navigate the stairs whenever I needed pain relief. My mother complained about the medical equipment cluttering the guest room. My father expressed annoyance at having to help carry my meals upstairs. We're not running a hospital here, he reminded me frequently. 5 days after I moved in, my parents hosted a family dinner. James, Heather, and Tyler came over along with my sister Alicia and Grandpa Thomas. It was the first time I'd seen my nephew since the accident. Tyler seemed confused by my condition, but offered me a crayon drawing he'd made. This is you getting better, he explained, pointing to a stick figure with a rainbow over it. Thank you, Tyler. That's really thoughtful, I said, genuinely touched by his gesture. Heather quickly interjected.